A store that sells new husbands has just opened in New York City, where a woman may go to choose a husband. Among the instructions at the entrance is a description of how the store operates. You may visit the store only once. There are 6 floors, and the attributes of the men increase as the shopper ascends the flights. There is, however, a catch. You may choose any man from a particular floor, or you may choose to go up a floor, but you cannot go back down except to exit the building. So a woman goes to the husband store to find a husband. On the first floor, the sign on the door reads, Floor 1, these men have jobs. The second floor sign reads, Floor 2, these men have jobs and love kids. The third floor sign reads, Floor 3, these men have jobs, love kids, and are extremely good looking. Wow, she thinks, but feels compelled to keep going. She goes to the 4th floor and sign reads, Floor 4 is, so these men have jobs. Love kids are drop-dead good-looking and help with the housework. Oh, mercy me, she exclaims. I can hardly stand it. Still, she goes to the 5th floor and sign reads, Floor 5. These men have jobs, love kids, are drop-dead gorgeous, help with the housework, and have a strong romantic streak. She is so tempted to stay, but she goes to the 6th floor and the sign reads, Floor 6. Your visitor 31,456,012 to this floor. There are no men on this floor. This floor exists solely as proof that women are impossible to please. Thank you for shopping at the husband store. A new wives store opened across the street. The first floor has wives that love sex. The second floor has wives that love sex and have money. The 3rd through 6th floors have never been visited. One day, while the boy was away at school, his father decided to try an experiment. What he did was he went into the boy's room and placed on his study table these 3 objects: a Bible, a silver dollar, and a bottle of whiskey. Now then, the old preacher said to himself, I'll just hide behind the door here. And when my son comes home from school this afternoon, I'll see which of these 3 objects he picks up. If he picks up the Bible, he's going to be a preacher like me. And what a blessing that would be. If he picks up the dollar, he's going to be a businessman, and that would be okay too. But if he picks up the bottle, he's going to be a drunkard, a no-good drunkard. And Lord, what a shame that would be. The old man was anxious as he waited, and soon he heard his son's footsteps as he came into the house whistling and headed back to his room. He deposited his books on the bed as a matter of routine, and as he turned around to leave the room, he spotted the objects on the table. With a curious set in his eye, he walked over to inspect them. What he finally did was he picked up the Bible and placed it under his arm. He picked up the silver dollar and dropped it into his pocket, uncorked the bottle, and took a big drink. Lord have mercy, the old man whispered. He's going to be a politician. A young man volunteered for military service during World War II. He had such a high aptitude for aviation that he was sent right to Pensacola Naval Air Station, skipping recruit training. The very first day at Pensacola, he solos and is the best flyer on the base. All they could do was give him his gold wings and assign him immediately to an aircraft carrier in the Pacific. On his first day aboard, he took off and single-handedly shot down 6 Japanese fighter planes. Then, climbing up to 20,000 feet, he found 9 more Japanese planes and shot them all down as well. Noting that his fuel was getting low, he descended quickly and came in for a perfect carrier landing on the deck. He threw back the canopy, climbed out, and jogged over to the captain. Saluting smartly, he said, Well, sir, how did I do on my very first day? The captain turned around, bowed politely, and replied, You make one very, very serious mistake. Sitting on the side of the highway waiting to catch speeding drivers, a state police officer sees a car puttering along at 22 miles per hour. He thinks to himself, This driver is just as dangerous as a speeder. So he turns on his lights and pulls the driver over. Approaching the car, he notices that there are 5 old ladies, 2 in the front seat and 3 in the back, eyes wide and white as ghosts. The driver, obviously confused, says to him, Officer, I don't understand. I was doing exactly the speed limit. What seems to be the problem? Ma'am, the officer replies, You weren't speeding, but you should know that driving slower than the speed limit can also be a danger to other drivers. Slower than the speed limit? No, sir, I was doing the speed limit exactly. 22 miles an hour, the old woman says a bit proudly. The state police officer, trying to contain a chuckle, explains to her that 22 inches was the route number, not the speed limit. A bit embarrassed, the woman grinned and thanked the officer for pointing out her error. But before I let you go, ma'am, I have to ask, is everyone in this car okay? These women seem awfully shaken and they haven't muttered a single peep this whole time, the officer asks. Oh, though they'll be fine in a minute or two, officer. We just got off Route 119. Bach was the most famous composer in the world, and so was Handel. Handel was half German, half Italian, and half English. He was very large. Bach died from 1750 to the present. Beethoven wrote music even though he was deaf. He was so deaf he wrote loud music. He took long walks in the forest, even when everyone was calling for him. Beethoven expired in 1827 and later died for this. The sun never set on the British Empire because the British Empire is in the east and the sun sets in the west. Queen Victoria was that reigning queen. She sat on a throne for 63 years. Her declining years and finally the end of her life were exemplary of a great personality. Her death was the final event that ended her reign. The 19th century was a time of many great inventions and thoughts. The invention of the steamboat caused a network of rivers to spring up. Cyrus McCormick invented the McCormick Reaper, which did the work of 100 men. Samuel Morse invented a code of telegraphy. Louis Pasteur discovered a cure for rabies. Charles Darwin was a naturalist who wrote The Origin of the Species. Madman Curie discovered radium. There was a farmer who raised watermelons. He was doing pretty well, but he was disturbed by some local kids who would sneak into his watermelon patch at night and eat watermelons. After some careful thought, he came up with a clever idea that he thought would scare the kids away for sure. So he made up a sign and posted it in the field. The next day, the kids showed up and they saw his sign. Warning, one of the watermelons in this field has been injected with cyanide. Well, the kids were bright and not about to risk another watermelon. They ran off, made up their own sign, and posted it next to the sign that the farmer made. The next day, the farmer showed up to look over the field, and he noticed to his delight that no watermelons were missing. He was perplexed, however, by a sign next to his. He drove his tractor up to the sign, which read, "Now there are two." A man observed a woman in the grocery store with a 3-year-old girl in her cart. As they passed the cookie section, the little girl asked for cookies, and her mother said to her, "No." The little girl immediately began to whine and fuss, and the mother said quietly, "Now, Brenda, we just have 5 of the aisles left to go through. Don't be upset. It won't be long now." Soon they came to the candy aisle, and the little girl began to shout for candy. When told she couldn't have any, she began to cry. The mother said, There, Brenda, don't cry. Only 2 more aisles to go, and then we'll be checking out." When they got to the checkout stand, the little girl immediately began to clamor for gum and burst into a terrible tantrum upon discovering there'd be no gum purchased. The mother said serenely, "Brenda, just control yourself. We'll be through this checkout stand in 5 minutes." The man followed them out to the parking lot and stopped the woman to compliment her. "I couldn't help noticing how patient you were with little Brenda," he began. The mother replied, "I'm Brenda. My little girl's name is Ashley." There was this preacher who was an avid golfer. Every chance he could get, he could be found on the golf course, swinging away. It was an obsession. One Sunday was a picture-perfect day for golfing. The sun was out, no clouds in the sky, and the temperature was just right. The preacher was in a quandary as to what to do, and shortly, the urge to play golf overcame him. He called an assistant to tell him that he was sick and could not do church, packed the car up, and drove 3 hours to a golf course where no one would recognize him. Happily, he began to play the course. As this was going on, an angel up above was watching the preacher and was quite perturbed. He went to God and said, "Look at the preacher. He should be punished for what he is doing." God nodded in agreement. The preacher teed up on the first hole. He swung at the ball and sailed effortlessly through the air and landed right in the cup 350 yards away. A picture-perfect hole-in-one. He was amazed and excited, his mouth open in shock. The angel was a little shocked as well. He turned to God and said, "Begging your pardon, but I thought you were going to punish him." God smiled. "Think about it. Who is he going to tell?" A man rents a room and pays extra on the condition the landlady prepare his work lunch every day. So on the first day, she packs him a sandwich on normal sandwich bread, using the last night's leftovers of meatloaf, adding in some fruit and a bottle of soda. When he comes home, he politely tells her that it wasn't quite enough food for him. The next day, she makes two sandwiches, turkey this time, and adds a container of salad, some crackers and peanut butter, and a slice of cake. That night, he told her most apologetically that while the food was delicious, he found himself still hungry, and could she possibly put in a little more tomorrow? The next day, she uses long slices of sourdough bread to construct a pair of huge sandwiches, and includes crackers and peanut butter, chips and dip, and veggies and ranch dressing, and a whole 2 liter of soda. That night, he smiles very kindly and tells her it was almost enough food. The next day, throwing caution to the wind and idly wondering if she's feeding his entire workplace, she cuts a loaf of bread in half and stuffs it with pounds of meat and cheese, an entire head of lettuce, tomatoes, onions, other vegetables, and sauces, everything. That night, he fixes her with a dry look and says, "So I see we're back down to one sandwich?" Two college students accidentally missed the math final exam. The next day, they both went to plead with their professor. He was feeling pretty good that day, so he allowed them to retake it. He told them to both come back tomorrow for an oral exam. When they both showed up, he told one of them to wait outside while he tested the other. So one enters, and the other puts his ear to the door to listen. The professor begins asking the question, "You are riding in a train car and you get too hot. What do you do?" The student replies, "I open the window." "Okay, now that window is 2 feet wide and 3 feet high. The train is traveling 50 miles per hour going north, and the wind is blowing at 15 miles per hour due east. How long will it take for new air to replace the old air in the car?" The student is clearly confused by this difficult question and just answers, "I don't know." So the professor gives him an F, dismisses him, and calls in his friend. He begins asking his friend, "You are riding in a train car and it gets too hot. What do you do?" He says, "I will take my jacket off." "Okay, but it's still too hot. What do you do?" "I take my shirt off." "I understand, but it's very, very hot." "I will just get naked." "Okay, but there are people in the car who will see you get naked." "With all respect, professor," said the student, "I don't care if my grandmother and my priest are there. There's no way I'm opening that darn window." A young man dressed walks tall through the doors of the local coffee shop one Sunday morning. He sits lazily and looks the place up and down before raising his hand and summoning a waiter. "I would like your freshest coffee. None of that muddy stuff you probably usually make from yesterday's leftovers." The waiter assured him they make fresh coffee many times per day. "I'll believe it when I taste it," said the young man. "I'm from New York and I know good coffee. There's very little chance you've got good coffee here, so at least make a new batch for me." And he shoos him away. The waiter goes to the kitchen and comes back with a cup of steamy coffee. The man tastes it and immediately makes a disgusted face. "Just what I thought. That's not fresh. Come on, make me another one." The waiter goes back to the kitchen and indeed takes some time to return. Upon his return, he is holding a steaming and aromatic coffee cup. The waiter gives the gentleman the cup and he takes a sip, before spitting it out immediately. He turns to the waiter and shouts, "This is way worse. This coffee tastes like mud." The waiter, looking surprised, turns to the man and says, "But sir, it's fresh ground." A guy enters a Home Depot and tells one of the employees that he wants to buy an electric saw to cut down trees. The employee says, "I got just what you need. Look at this beauty. It can cut down 100 trees a day." The guy likes it, buys it, and goes home. The next week, the same guy comes back to Home Depot with an angry face and tells the employee, "This electric saw is terrible. I could only cut down 50 trees a day." The employee answers, "I'm sorry to hear that, sir. Look, we've got an even better option. This new electric saw that can cut 200 trees a day." The man's face lights up. He returns the old electric saw and buys the new one. 1 week later, he comes back with an even angrier face and demands the employee, "You told me I could cut down 200 trees with this saw, but I can only cut down 100. I want my money back." The employee apologizes. "I'm truly sorry to hear that. Look, we just got this brand new state-of-the-art electric saw that can cut 400 trees a day." Again, the guy returns the old saw and happily buys the new one. 1 week passes and the guy storms into Home Depot. He yells, I am fed up. No matter what I did, I could only cut down 200 trees a day. The employee says, okay, sir, have us up. Look at the saw. So the employee takes the saw and cranks it up. The sound of the motor can be heard throughout the whole shop. The guy looks at the employee with disbelief and asks, what the hell is that sound? A businessman was in a great deal of trouble. His business was failing. He had put everything he had into the business, and he owed everybody. It was so bad he was even contemplating suicide. As a last resort, he went to a priest and poured out his story of tears and woe. When he had finished, the priest said, here's what I want you to do. Put a beach chair and your Bible in your car and drive down to the beach. Take the beach chair and the Bible to the water's edge. Sit down in the beach chair and put the Bible in your lap. Open the Bible. The wind will rifle the pages, but finally the open Bible will come to rest on a page. Look down at the page and read the first thing you see. That will be your answer. That will tell you what to do. A year later, the businessman went back to the priest and brought his wife and children with him. The man was in a new custom-tailored suit, his wife in a mink coat, and the children were shining. The businessman pulled an envelope stuffed with money out of his pocket and gave it to the priest as a donation and thanks for his advice. The priest recognized the benefactor and was curious. You did as I suggested? He asked. Absolutely, replied the businessman. You went to the beach? Absolutely. You sat in a beach chair with the Bible in your lap? Absolutely. You let the pages riffle until they stopped? Absolutely. And what were the first words you saw? Chapter 11. An extraordinarily handsome man decided he had the God-given responsibility to marry the perfect woman so they could produce children beyond comparison. With that as his mission, he began searching for the perfect woman. After a diligent but fruitless search up and down the East Coast, he started to head west. Shortly thereafter, he met a farmer who had 3 stunning, gorgeous daughters that positively took his breath away. So he explained his mission to the farmer, asking for permission to marry one of them. The farmer simply replied, they're all looking to get married, so you came to the right place. Look them over and select the one you want. The man dated the first daughter. The next day, the farmer asked for the man's opinion. Well, said the man, she's just a wee bit. Not that you can hardly notice, but pigeon-toed. The farmer nodded and suggested the man date one of the other girls, so the man went out with the second daughter. The next day, the farmer again asked how things went. Well, the man replied, she's just a wee bit. Not that you can hardly tell, cross-eyed. The farmer nodded and suggested he date the third girl to see if things might be better. So he did. The next morning, the man rushed in exclaiming, she's perfect, just perfect. She's the one I want to marry. So they were wed right away. Months later, the baby was born. When the man visited the nursery, he was horrified. The baby, while cute, had the ugliest face he ever saw. He rushed to his father-in-law, asking how such a thing could happen, considering the parents. Well, explained the farmer, she was just a wee bit. Not that you could hardly tell pregnant when you met her. Received a call from a female recruitment consultant. She said to me, sir, I have 2 openings for you. I replied, yes, I know. There was a long silence, and then she said, I replied, I prefer the other one. A golfer playing in Ireland hooked his drive into the woods. Looking for his ball, he found a little leprechaun flat on his back, a big bump on his head, and the golfer's ball beside him. Horrified, the golfer got his water bottle from the cart and poured it over the little guy, reviving him. Ah, what happened? The leprechaun asked. I'm afraid I hit you with my golf ball, the golfer says. Oh, I see. Well, you got old Patty here, fair and square. You get 3 wishes, so what do you want? Thank God you're all right, the golfer answers in relief. I don't want anything. I'm just glad you're okay. And I apologize. And then he just walks off. Wow, what a nice guy, the leprechaun says to himself. I have to do something for him. I'll give him the 3 things I would want. A great golf game, all the money he ever needs, and a fantastic love life. A year goes by and the golfer is back. On the same hole, he again hits a bad drive into the woods, and the leprechaun is there waiting for him. It was me that made you hit the ball here, the little guy says. I just want to ask you, how's your golf game? My game is fantastic, the golfer answers. I'm an internationally famous golfer now. He adds, by the way, it's good to see you're all right. Oh, I'm fine now, thank you. I did that for your golf game. And tell me, how's your money situation? Why, it's just wonderful, the golfer says cheerfully. When I need cash, I just reach in my pocket and pull out $100 bills I didn't even know were there. I did that for you also. And tell me, how's your love life? The golfer blushes, turns his head away in embarrassment, and says shyly, it's okay. Come on now, urged the leprechaun. I'm just wanting to know if I did a good job here. How many times a week do you do the deed? Blushing even more, the golfer looks around and then whispers, once, sometimes twice a week. What? Responds the leprechaun in shock. That's all? Only once or twice a week? Well, says the golfer, I figure that's not bad for a Catholic priest in a small parish. A guy receives an ad in the mail for a golf resort where everything costs $1. He jumps at the offer and heads off for a weekend of fun in the sun. He arrives and plays a round of golf. It cost him $1. When he goes for dinner that evening, it costs him another $1. His room is only $1 a day. The day before he's to check out, he heads out to play a last round and stops by the pro shop and charges a sleeve of 3 balls to his room. When he's checking out next morning, he looks at the bill and sees golf, $1, dinner, $1, room, $1, sleeve of golf balls, $3,000. He asks the manager, what is this all about? Everything is supposed to cost $1, and you charge me $3,000 for 3 golf balls. I'm sorry, sir, said the manager, but you didn't read the fine print in our promotional brochure. That's what our golf balls cost. Well, said the man, if I wanted to spend that kind of money, I could have gone to that luxury hotel across the street and paid them $1,000 a day for a room. At least I would have known what I was paying for. That's right, sir, you could have, said the manager. Over there, they get you by the room. Over here, we get you by the balls. A stockbroker walks past a kid selling lemonade. Hey, mister, do you want some lemonade? A little girl calls to him. The stockbroker is just getting out of his brand new BMW in a nice tailored suit. He was about to walk past when he took a double take at the sign that says, lemonade $50. Your sign is wrong, kid. I think you mean 50 cents. The little girl shakes her head. Nope, $50, mister. I need the money for space camp. The stockbroker pauses for a minute because he appreciates a good hustle, but clearly this kid is going about it the wrong way. Look, sweetie, I know you're trying to make money, but you have to charge what people are willing to pay. No one is going to pay that much for a tiny cup of lemonade. Now, what do you think is a fair price? The little girl beams and says, $50, mister. The stockbroker gives a little sigh and shakes his head. Okay, I'm going to pass. You see, you can't make a profit when no one pays your price. Now, do you have anything else for sale? Homemade brownies, 50 cents. The stockbroker winces in frustration. Okay, look, I studied economics at Harvard and I got my MBA from Wharton, so I'm going to teach you a little about business, okay? Now, each of your little cups of lemonade probably costs you about 50 cents, including the margin cost of your stand. He takes out $1. I'll pay you 10 times that much because I want to help you understand about markup. The little girl shakes her head and smiles. No thanks, mister. $50, please. You know what? I give up. Take this $1 and I'm going to buy 2 of your brownies. I know you're losing money on them, and I'm not going to buy a single cup of your overpriced lemonade. I'm trying to be nice and teach you about business, but I guess this is the only way for you to learn a lesson. Okay, the girl takes the $1 and puts 10 brownies on a plate. Just to make the point, the stockbroker decides to eat one of the brownies right in front of her. Suddenly, he begins coughing and gagging uncontrollably. Oh my God, no. What did you put in these? She grins happily and says, it's my special recipe. Eggs, flour, butter, cocoa, sawdust, and goat pellets. This is horrible. I have to get this taste out of my mouth. The little girl takes out a jar full of $50 bills, cocks her head to the side, and says through a beaming grin, you want some lemonade? 2 80-year-old pensioners are taking a trip down memory lane by going back to the place where they first met. Sitting at a cafe, the little old man says, remember the first time I met you over 50 years ago? We left this cafe, went around the corner behind the gasworks, and I gave you the thrill of your life." "Why, yes, I remember it well, dear," replies the little old lady with a grin. "Well, for old time's sake, let's go there again, and I'll do it again." The two pensioners pay their bill and leave the cafe. A young man sitting next to them had overheard the conversation and smiled to himself, thinking it would be quite amusing to see two old-timers at it. He gets up and follows them. Sure enough, he sees the two pensioners near the gasworks. The little old lady pulls off her knickers and lifts up her dress. The old man pulls down his pants and grabs the lady's hips. And the little old lady reaches for the fence. Well, what follows is 10 minutes of the most athletic lovemaking the man has ever seen. Limbs are flying everywhere. The movement is a blur, and they do not stop for a single second. Finally, they collapse and don't move for an entire hour. The young man is stunned. Never in his life has he ever seen anything that equates to this. Not in the movies, not from his friends, not from his own experiences. Reflecting on what he has just seen, he says to himself, "I have to know his secret. If only I could make love like that now, let alone in 50 years' time." The two old pensioners have by this time recovered and dressed themselves. Plucking up courage, the man approaches the pensioner. He says, "Sir, in all my life, I have never seen anybody make love like that, particularly at your age. What's your secret? Could you make love like that 50 years ago?" The pensioner replies, "I don't think so, son. 50 years ago, that fence wasn't electrified." And two couples were playing a round of poker one summer night when one of the husbands, Bob, accidentally dropped a few of his chips on the floor. As he bent down to retrieve them, he couldn't help but notice that Jay's wife, Kate, was touching him with her foot in a very obvious way. Later, Bob went into the kitchen to get some refreshments. Kate followed him and asked, "Do you like what you see?" Surprised by her boldness, Bob courageously admitted that, well, yes, he did. She said, "You can have it, but it will cost you $10,000. After taking a minute or two to assess the financial and moral costs of this offer, Bob indicated that he was indeed interested. She told him that since her husband Jay works Friday afternoons and Bob doesn't, Bob should be at her house around 2 p.m. Friday afternoon. When Friday rolls around, Bob shows up at Jay's house to make love to Jay's wife at 2 p.m. sharp. And after paying her the agreed-upon $10,000, they go to her bedroom and have a great time, just as Kate had promised. Afterwards, Bob quickly dresses and leaves. As was his habit at 6 p.m., Jay returned home from work. Upon entering the house and encountering his wife, he asked loudly, "Did Bob come by with my money?" With a lump in her throat, his wife answered, "Oh yeah, he did stop by here for a few minutes this afternoon." Her heart nearly skipped a beat when Jay curtly asked, "And did he give you $10,000? In terror, she assumed she'd somehow been found out, and after mustering up her best poker face, she replied, "Well, yes, in fact, he did give me a $10,000. Jay, with a satisfied look on his face, surprised Kate by saying, "Good, I was hoping so. Bob came by my office last night and borrowed $10,000 from me. He promised me he'd stop by this afternoon on his way home and pay me back." One Sunday, as the pastor of a small church in Florida counted the weekly offering, he came across a pink envelope containing $1,000. The next Sunday, there was again a pink envelope with another $1,000. Intrigued, he discreetly watched as the collection plate was passed around and noticed a little old lady placing the familiar envelope in the plate. Week after week, the same thing happened. Finally, unable to hold back his curiosity, he approached her after the service. "Ma'am, I couldn't help but notice that you put $1,000 in the collection plate every week," he said, genuinely impressed. "Why, yes," she replied warmly. "My son sends me money every week, and I like to give some of it to the church." The pastor was astonished. "That's wonderful. How much does he send you?" $10,000 a week, she answered proudly. The pastor's eyes widened. "Wow, your son must be very successful. What does he do for a living?" "He's a veterinarian," she replied. The pastor smiled, nodding. "What an honorable profession. Where does he practice?" With a gleam of pride, the little old lady answered, "In Nevada, he has 2 cat houses in Las Vegas and 1 in Reno." A mother of 3 and a lawyer are sitting next to each other on a flight. The lawyer insists they play a game where they ask each other questions. If the mom doesn't know the answer, she pays him $5. If he doesn't know the answer, he owes her $500. Intrigued, the mom agrees, thinking this will be quick. The lawyer asks the first question: what's the distance from the Earth to the moon? Without missing a beat, the mom pulls out $5 and hands it to him. Now it's her turn. She asks, what goes up a hill with 3 legs and comes down with 4 legs? The lawyer, confident at first, spends the next hour Googling, emailing colleagues, and even searching the Library of Congress, but no answer. Frustrated, he finally hands her $500. She thanks him, takes the $500, and goes back to sleep. The lawyer, still perplexed, wakes her up. Well, what's the answer? Without a word, the mom pulls out $5 from her purse and hands it to him. Moral of the joke: don't mess with a mom who's trying to nap. She's always one step ahead.